Our journey began at 10 a.m. on one day of the week a few years ago. A and I decided to drive to New Orleans for spring break. Now, we were only 18, maybe 19, I can't remember, and you'll see why. This meant that we couldn't go there to hit the bars, and not to spoil anything, but we sure as hell tried. The mission: get as fucked up as humanly possible. If we died down there, then we died down there, and we did not care. We lived about 20 minutes from Cleveland, Ohio. I picked up A from the Giant Eagle that was right by his apartment. Giant Eagle is a grocery store. 10 a.m. hits, and we start our journey. First on the list of controlled substances that we were taking down there was an ounce of weed. This was when it was rare to get dispensary weed in a state that didn't have medical or recreational laws, and we were lucky to have had the best of what we could find. Today it would probably be considered just regular good weed, but back then it was expensive to get that high-grade shit. We hit Route 2 down to I-271 South. This is where I stopped understanding the directions. We used a GPS, but basically from Ohio to New Orleans through Kentucky and other such states. After a couple minutes, we dive into the marijuana realm. Somewhere in Tennessee, we smoke a joint rolled in a raw cone, king size I think. We may have smoked another one shortly after, but my memory is a little dry. After a while, still in Tennessee, we get off at an exit to use the bathroom and charge our phones. Well, we got off at the wrong exit. The town was empty except for a good dozen homeless people wandering around in the literal middle of the street. It looked like a zombie apocalypse. The weed hit us good, and this freaked us out a little. So, in a panic, we looked for a nicer looking area to stop, and we ended up at a mall that had one of the largest Bass Pro Shops in America. After a few hours of charging our phones, we hit the road. Now, if my memory is correct, it's about 7 p.m., give or take, and it is starting to get dark. We were nearing an exit that would have taken us to Birmingham, Alabama. Most people probably wouldn't even pay mind to this, but it just happens that while we were charging our phones, we decided to look up the worst cities in America, crime-wise, and Birmingham was top 5 on every single list. I happened to be driving, and I almost accidentally got off at that exit. This mixed with our near debilitating paranoia sent us in for a mental shock. We ended up driving around 50 miles further, and since it was sometime near 1 a.m., we decided to stop at the next rest area to try and sleep. It was now 1 a.m., and we were sleeping at a rest stop almost 1,000 miles away from home, in the middle of nowhere. No pillows, no blankets. With this in mind, and the fact that at the time I had a Toyota Corolla from 2008, neither of us got much sleep. I think it was around 4 a.m. when we decided to get back on the road. The rest of the trip we didn't smoke anymore, since we were afraid we'd get even more paranoid. Nothing interesting really happened again until we got to Louisiana. All I remember is A and I being so excited to see a palm tree. Our 16 to 17 hour drive was almost over. When we got to New Orleans, we couldn't check into our hotel because we were early. Side note, whichever hotel we stayed at was so nice, and it's a shame that it's no longer open. So we decided to drive around downtown just to check out the area. Now, remember how I said the first controlled substance we had was the most fresh ounce of weed we could find? Well, I'd also brought about 50 fake Xanax with me. I do not really recommend people take Xanax, for that matter, anything that we did in this story, and especially fake ones. When we got to the motel to finally check in, we decided it would be a good idea to see how illegal it was to have these drugs. I can't remember exactly what the sentences were, but the weed alone I'm pretty sure was 10 years in prison for an ounce in Louisiana. Either way, we had already committed numerous drug trafficking felonies, so A and I were not going to puss out now. Being on the way to downtown, sometime around 3 or 4, we decided not to take any Xanax yet because we wanted to familiarize ourselves with our surroundings. Also, we were afraid of those homeless people. After we had driven around and familiarized ourselves with the area, we were able to check into the hotel. Sometime around 6:30 is when we set off on our grand adventure. Deciding it would not be a good idea to get blitzed on the first night, A and I only took a quarter of a bar. This made it much easier to get around the vagabonds, who turned out not to really bother anyone that wasn't driving by, so we were scared for nothing. Not much happened the first night, mainly just scouting around the area to figure out what was worth checking out. This is where the fun begins. Whoever was running the room next to us was smoking pot, as it could be smelled throughout the hall. This gave us the idea to smoke whenever we wanted, and if someone complained, we'd blame it on them. The first thing done that morning was smoking a joint. Next, we each took a bar. Now A and I are making our way towards downtown, enjoying the scenery, stealing beers from the corner store, and eating whatever food we could afford. While walking down a street adjacent to Bourbon Street, we came across a homeless man laying down. As soon as we got near him, he curled over and looked as if he snorted something resembling glass. Fearing he would act out, A and I both immediately turned around and started walking away. His screams were heard from 2 blocks away. One restaurant just so happened to have a balcony, and it was decided that this is where our first feast would take place. Greeted by a man who looked like Slash, if Slash was on heroin and never a rock star. A conversation struck about Freemasons, himself claiming to be one, and then we were at the top. While dining, I enjoyed an unfiltered cigarette which had been mistaken for pot. A woman had asked if it was, saying they just got there from Colorado. Only now do I realize that I could have been an entrepreneur in the business of medicinal herbs. Sometime in the midday, it occurred to us that a grinder would be beneficial to rolling joints, and thusly, one was sought out. Curious, we asked the gentleman running the smoke shop where the grinder was purchased what the legality of weed was around here. Turns out, only in the city of New Orleans is marijuana a ticket. This changed everything. The more Xanax we took, the more ballsy we got. Nearing night, we took more, assumably only 1 more each. However, with what will become a common theme, my memories are fuzzy. Wandering around in the blooming nightlife, A and I found a cigar store. Stolen cigars and beers are a great combination. Eventually finding ourselves behind a bar watching people ride a mechanical bull, we stumbled across a man with huge-ass beads. Unfortunately, he sold his huge-ass beads, but still roams the street of New Orleans. And then we returned back to our motel. Day 2, regular morning routine, a joint and a Xanax, then straight to the corner store in downtown to steal booze. After grabbing our mid-morning treat, A and I made our way to a restaurant across the street that had outdoor dining. We asked if we could bring our drinks, and to our surprise, it was no problem. Turns out, our waiter was from the same area we were from, and we had a pleasant conversation. I ordered crawfish, and no matter how delicious it was, this was not a good choice. After our meal, I threw up all over A's arm. This followed with a joint and a Xanax. I needed to relax after this, so we went to sit on some steps that were formed leading up to a building. At this point, a young man gave us his mixtape. A and I were so excited to listen to it, but C sat on it and broke it. I still want to listen to that man. I cannot remember anything else major that happened this night. This is partly because as soon as it got dark, we would try to buy drinks at the bar. We were only 19. Every time we were asked for ID, we would get upset, then take another Xanax. A believes that we kept going into the same few bars without realizing it, only to get ID'd again. Day 3 and 4, same old morning routine as before. My memory of these days are pretty much gone. I have no idea what we did other than wander around. We had been taking so much fake Xanax that we were pretty much completely blacked out for the rest of the trip. I do remember on the 3rd day, A and I went into a Rocket Fizz, and I stole for the first and only time in my life. It was a handful of candy, and I really could not care less that I did it. However, I get no rush from stealing, so it isn't something I ever plan on doing again. The only thing I can remember from these last 2 days is on the morning we were to check out from the hotel. I woke up before A. The sun was up, but I had no clue what time it was, and tried to wake him up also. He was unresponsive to me yelling at him, so I threw a shoe at him. He did not respond in any matter to this, so I went back to bed. I wasn't even thinking that he could have been dead. On our ride home, we listened to the radio, and for the entirety of our short trip through Mississippi, every single radio station was playing Prince. Little Red Corvette came on 3 different channels right after each other. It was very strange. This time, we decided to drive straight back and only stop once or twice for gas and to use the restroom. And the only time we smoked a joint was when we got back to Cleveland. All in all, it was a really fun time, even if I can't remember all the fun we had. Don't do drugs, kids. You just listened to T's perspective of the New Orleans trip. A had worked on his own side of the story too, so I will read anything T may have missed in his story. It starts off when they got there. When we finally made it to New Orleans, we had to drive over this bridge over the ocean in the pouring rain. This was kind of fun for me, but I know T was scared driving on it. I wasn't not scared, but I was more fascinated with it. Since Cloverfield is one of our favorite movies, I remember telling T that it would be terrifying if the monster from the movie came out of the water. He looked at me and gave me a shut the fuck up kind of face. When we pulled down the street to our hotel, it looked decrepit, and we got nervous that our hotel was going to be in the middle of this mess. Luckily, after driving past the boarded up houses and suspicious looking people walking on the street, it led to an area where there were colorful houses and a coffee shop. That was a big sigh of relief. It was actually really beautiful down there. You could tell that a bunch of hipsters lived there. Fast forward to the next day. We went to that coffee shop I just mentioned, and we would stop there every day before walking downtown. It was a very nice place to sit and talk. We would always take a quarter or half bar before going in. We were getting fucked up so early in the day. We would start off by smoking a joint on the balcony. Also, we never got in trouble for doing that. Our view was nice though. You could see the New Orleans skyline and the Superdome where the Saints play football. That was truly a spectacle. It was ginormous, and I love looking at big things from a distance. It's weird, but whatever. We always got the munchies after smoking, and if you didn't know, Xanax gives you the munchies too. Maybe even more so than weed. We had packed snacks, and one of our favorite snacks was Oreos. We had the double stuff too. T was going ham on them things, and he ate like half the package. I started reading the nutrition facts for the cookies, and realized how much sugar and added sugar was in them. We both started busting out laughing at the fact he had a week's worth of added sugar in less than a minute. Anyways, we went to that coffee shop and walked downtown. On the way downtown was always the scariest part. There were homeless people under the bridge all the time, and we truly did feel bad for them, but we didn't want to pass them up. So trying to avoid them, we decided going in a new direction, and this ended up being worse. We were walking down the street, and 500 feet down, maybe closer, was a black man who had these two metal rods. They could have been swords, I'm not sure. He was swinging them around like he was some sort of samurai master. Mind you, this was like at 7 or 8 in the morning, so seeing that freaked us the fuck out. It would be scary at any time of day, but even scarier that early. He had to be on meth or something. Plus, we were the only ones over there, so I don't know what would have happened if he saw us. One day, we decided to go to this kava bar where you can smoke kava out of a dab rig. It was a 4-mile walk from downtown, and we decided to say fuck it and walked it. We were on Xanax, so walking 4 miles isn't easy. After we visited that place, we took a trolley back to the city, and that was very peaceful. That's all I can remember fun-wise from the trip. The rest is kind of like a blur, with a few spurts of memory thrown in. We had to at least take 8 Xanax each day. We were so fucked up and did not care about anything. Stealing was no issue for me, and mixing that with weed and Xanax was just a bad idea. I remember we would smoke in the middle of Bourbon Street, and no one really cared. It was kind of cool, but I am just so thankful we didn't get a ticket or anything. The last day before we left could have killed us. Well, at least me. I was hungry for something, so I decided to eat some chicken. Then, my stomach started hurting so bad, I couldn't even take a bite. I think my stomach pain was from drinking several beers and taking many Xanax. After that, we decided to go back to the room, nap, and then go out later to enjoy the city at night like we have been doing. On the way back, T wanted to go to the gas station, so we split up and went our separate ways. The more that I think about this, the more anxiety I get. Who knows what could have happened to us on our own? What if I ran into another metal rod guy? What if someone robbed me? What if the metal rod guy robbed me? These things went through my head after the fact. Somehow, we made it back alive, but we never went back into the city. When we got back, it was probably around 4 p.m., and we just blacked out. The morning after is when T threw a shoe at me, and I didn't wake up. When he told me this, shivers went down my spine as I didn't feel anything or hear him screaming at me. Luckily, I woke up later, and we left at like 7 a.m. to go back to Ohio. That's basically everything else I can add to this story. It was a great trip, but I'm so thankful we came out of this alive. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Please follow me on Instagram at TheTripKeeper. I just eclipsed 2,000 followers, and I'm thankful for every single one of you. Also comment down below if you had a crazy Xanax binge. And the next video after this is going to be a Datura video, so be on the lookout for that. Stay safe out there, you trip seekers, and have a good one.